Good morning, and thank you for tuning in to Calvary Baptist Church. My name is Brad, and I'm the pastor here. We hope that you had a great 4th of July holiday with family, spending time celebrating our nation and its birth. I hope that you have all your fingers left from the actual firecrackers, and we just hope that you had a great time this Saturday as you celebrated. I want to just give you a word of encouragement really quick before we get started. If the way that we're doing this and giving you the option of watching online has been helpful because you're not able to make it to church. Once again, I just want to remind you that one of the reasons why we've made this option available is for those that aren't able to make it to church. If you are able, listen, nothing can replace being in church. You need to be here, and this is a great asset just to be able to have, but it should never replace the actual physical going to church, okay? So we want to make sure that you invite you to come to church if you're here in town, and if you're part of the church and haven't been back for a while, I'd love to invite you to get back to church. And then also, if this has been a blessing to you because you maybe work or you're not been able to come to church because of health reasons, would you consider maybe helping our media ministry by just donating or giving online at www.cbcelkcity.com, and there where you give, you can just make it out to give towards our media fund, and we're trying to get everything ready to be able to put into place by the end of July. I'm actually having a shoulder surgery on August 6th, and I would like to have everything in place by that time, all the media stuff set up so we can actually run live services through our social media. So if you would mind donating towards that cause, if it's something that's a blessing to you, we would love for you to show your appreciation that way. That would be just such a blessing to us. Thank you so much for doing that. And this morning, go ahead and turn to Joshua chapter number 22. Joshua chapter 22. We've been going through what we're saying is our purpose as a church. Together for the gospel, or what we're saying because of the gospel. There's certain things we do because of the gospel. We want to keep the main thing. The main thing is the gospel, and we want to say, what are those things that we are trying to really pursue here? And so we said worship, unity, service, and mission are the things that we're trying so hard to pursue and make the priority of our church because of the gospel. We want people to know the gospel shapes and changes our life. And so for the first 2 weeks, we talked about worship. Last week, we started talking about unity. Now, we said, what a great time to talk about unity. I mean, we're talking with all the division in the land that we have, with all different opinions and preferences, and then bring all those people to a church, and then let's talk about unity. It almost sounds like it's a comedian sketch, because how does that happen? And so we talked about a lot last week about how the root of really unity is humility. It's not lifting ourselves up in pride. And so we said that was the root, and that we were going to continue to dive deeper into this. And we're going to look at a story here, and it's a great story here found in Joshua, and it's going to help us understand some things. And the title of this morning's message is simply this: resolving conflict in an outrage culture. I don't think that I'm out of place or out of line saying we live in an outrage culture. I mean, I don't even want to get into it, all the stuff that you look at, but just turn on your average news media outlet, outrage. Turn on ESPN, outrage. Turn on anything you want to gain social media, gain information from, outrage. People clickbaity, I'm telling you, just trying to get you to click on their links, and so they put out a headline that's going to make you outraged. And I feel like the tension is just continuing to build and to build and to build. That really the reality is that we just are supposed to be always outraged. And I'm going to tell you something from a Bible perspective, that mentality of always being outraged is not good for your spiritual health, and it sure ain't good for your physical health. Stress, blood pressure, Just the worry and the anxiety, it's not good for us. And of course, we're trying to take this as an approach of talking about, well, how do we resolve conflict in an outraged culture within the church? But I believe what we're going to be talking about applies even outside of the church. So let's just look at what's happening here. Now, I want us to look here, starting verse number 22, and our chapter number 22. And notice what's going on here. It says, "Then Joshua called the Reubenites, the Gadites, the half-tribe of Manasseh, and said unto them, Ye have kept all that Moses the servant of the Lord commanded you, and have obeyed my voice in all that I have commanded you." Now, we have to understand what's going on here at the very beginning is the fact that there's been 7 years of warring and going in and conquering the promised land. And finally, if you just back up a couple verses in the chapter 21, you'll notice what happens. It says that, verse number 44, "The Lord gave the rest round about according to all that he sware unto their fathers, and there stood no man of all their enemies before them. The Lord delivered all their enemies into their hand. There failed not any good thing which the Lord has spoken unto the house of Israel, all came to pass." So God said, go in and conquer this land, but at the same time, I want you to know you're going to have to put forth effort, but I'm going to keep my promise. And so here it is that they've done that, and so God has kept his promise, and now that it's saying, now that Joshua's coming to the conclusion, they're wrapping it up, and he's going to be giving almost like an honorable discharge for the military service for the tribes of Gad and Reuben and the half-tribe of Manasseh, giving them an honorable discharge. And he says here, I want you to know that I'm giving you this because you have kept your promise. So God kept his promise, but now there's a promise that's been kept by the tribe of Gad and half-tribe of Manasseh and Reuben. And so we asked the question, what was it that this promise that had been made? What happened? What was going on at that time? And if you have to actually go back to Numbers, and so look there in Numbers in chapter number 32. In Numbers chapter 32, something happens that there's a promise made between these tribes and Moses. And what happened is, as they were traveling, they came to a nice piece of land that was going to be used for cattle. They looked and they said, man, this is great cattle grazing land. We would like to stay here. If you notice what happens in Numbers chapter 32, and verse number 1, it says, "Now the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and they had a very great multitude of cattle when they saw the land of Jazer, the land of Gilead, that behold, the place was a place for cattle. And it says that the children of Gad and the children of Reuben came and spake unto Moses and Eleazar the priest, and said unto the prince of the congregation," all these places that you see here, even this country, verse number 4, "which is the Lord, smote before the congregation of Israel, is land for cattle, thy servants have cattle. Wherefore, said they, if we have found grace in thy sight, let this land be given unto thy servants for a possession, and bring us not over Jordan." So here's what's going on. They've conquered a lot of land. They're supposed to go and cross over Jordan and conquer the rest of the land. But these tribes say, hey, listen, this is a great area for actually grazing. This is a great area for our cattle. We are cattle people. Can we actually just stay right here and this be our portion of land? So here's what happened is that Moses begins to have a little bit of concern for a couple things. He's saying, hey, listen, you're going to be cut off from us. The Jordan's going to keep you from being right here close to us. Then there's going to be some other things that you're going to be close to enemies. You'll have great influences. People been trying to get you to worship other gods. And then also, are you trying to get out of war? Are you really trying to just settle here and not go to war? And so here Moses actually asks and says, Moses said in verse number 6, "To the children of Gad and to the children of Reuben, shall your brothers go to war, and you sit here?" And he says, and wherefore discourage ye the heart of the children of Israel from going over into the land which the Lord hath given them? He's saying, listen, you're going to stay here, and you're going to cause the other people to say, hey, listen, why go to war? And God's promised to give us this land, and you're going to stay here, and it's going to discourage them that they're just going to want to stay. You're not fulfill what God's promised. And he says, it's going to have a huge impact. And he says, thus did the fathers, which I sent them from Kadesh Barnea to see the land. For they went up into the valley of Eshcol, and they saw the land, and discouraged their heart, the children of Israel. They should not go into the land which the Lord had given. And the Lord's anger was kindled the same day, and they swear, saying, surely none of the men that came up out of Egypt for 20 years and upward shall see the land. He's saying, listen, I've seen this happen before. And whenever you don't trust God's promises, God's anger is kindled. And what happens is they go, well, listen, that's not at all. We will go. Let us set up places for our family, and then all of us men, we will go fight with you. And that's what they did. They said, no, we're not trying to get out of this. We're not trying to get out of the battle. We're not trying to get out of the fight. We're going to go fight with you, but let's let our family stay here. And he says, okay, but listen, do not turn away from God. Don't turn away from God. Come fight. Now we can get back on track here. The decision was made. And so the tribes got that land for their cattle, and now they're going to cross over Jordan. The men are going to cross over Jordan, and they are going to go fight. They fight for 7 dedicated years while their families were on the other side of Jordan, conquering land not for their families, but for their people and for their families, all the other families that were part of the other tribes and what God had promised. They went and fought for them. So we come now to Joshua, and in Joshua chapter number 22, as you look at the rest of the story here, the time now has passed, the war has ended, God has fulfilled his promise. Now they are getting their honorable discharge. But Joshua now expresses some of the same concern that Moses had expressed, namely this: you are to be cut off from us. I want you to be focused on making sure you stay faithful to God and do what he says. So let's continue our reading here. He says in verse number 3, ye have not left your brethren these many days unto this day, and have kept the charge of the commandment of the Lord your God. And now the Lord your God hath given rest unto your brethren, as he hath promised them. Therefore now return ye, and get you to your tents and to your land, and the possession which Moses thy servant of the Lord gave you on the other side Jordan. But take diligent heed to do the commandment of the law which Moses thy servant of the Lord charged you, to love the Lord your God, to walk in his ways, and to keep his commandments, and to cleave unto him, and serve him with all your heart, with all your soul. He's saying, you're going to be cut off from us. There's no accountability for the rest of the tribe. But you purpose in your heart to serve God. Now, there's a great application there. You must purpose in your heart that you serve God. That's personal responsibility. You have to take the personal responsibility. There's nobody you can blame outside of yourself if you are not developing a spiritual walk with God. God has given you, the Bible says, everything you need for life and godliness. You have to take personal responsibility to do what he says. Now he says, cleave to God, don't lose attachment to him, and then make sure that you love him with all your heart, with all your soul, all your mind, something that we've recognized in the past about when love works. And so he says, do not run away from God. So Joshua blessed them, gave his permission, and sent them away, and they went into their tents. Now just imagine the rejoicing that was in their hearts. We are going home. I haven't seen my kid since he was a young kid. Now he's 7 years old. I haven't seen my wife in 7 years. And so here it is. It says, now on one half of the tribe of Manasseh, Moses had given possession in Bashan, but to the other half thereof gave Joshua among their brethren, the other side of Jordan, westward. And when Joshua sent them away also into their tents, then he blessed them. And he spake unto them, saying, return with much riches unto your tents with the very much cattle, silver, gold, with brass, iron, very much rain. Divide the spoil of your enemies with your brethren. So here they go, and they begin to go back into the land. So great rejoicing begins to happen. Now, but something happens. Verse number 10. And when they came unto the borders of Jordan that are in the land of Canaan, the children of Reuben, the children of Gad, the half tribe of Manasseh built there an altar by Jordan, a great altar to see to. Now, here's a problem that's already starting to arise. They built an altar. Now, this may not seem like a big deal, but one thing the Bible talks about, even in Deuteronomy, is that there's not to be any offerings sacrificed for God outside of where they're supposed to be doing it in Shiloh as one people coming together to make that sacrifice. So here's an altar that's being built. And we're going to see in a second that people begin to assume that they are making this altar for sacrifices. So notice what goes on to say, verse number 11, the children of Israel heard say. I just wanted to let you know right there. They heard say. And that is one of the biggest problems churches and individuals say, is they base a lot of decisions off of what they hear somebody has said and not what they actually know to be true. In other words, gossip, hearsay. Man, it's such a dividing thing amongst families, churches, and everything else. Workspace, doesn't matter. Gossip is a thing that will ruin everything. So he says right here, he says, they heard say, behold, the children of Reuben, the children of Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh have built an altar over against the land of Canaan and the borders of Jordan at the passages of the children of Israel. And when the children of Israel heard of it, the whole congregation of the Lord of children of Israel gathered themselves together at Shiloh to do what? To go up and war against them. They are going to war with their brothers who they have fought for 7 years. They have sacrificed 7 years to fight for a land that they were not even going to live in, to keep their promise to Moses and to God. And now that they've heard this about them, they are now going to go war against them based off just something that they have heard. Outrage. I mean, how much more of it applicable is this to what we are seeing in our culture today? They heard something and they're outraged. They didn't seek out the truth. They became outraged over what they've heard. We're going to war with them. We're going to go fight them. And we could actually look and see, was this maybe something that was justified? See, they were right in their righteous anger to justify what the people had done to go fight for the sake of God. But they were wrong in their rush to judgment to become outraged over something they have heard. It reminds me of what James chapter 1 verse 19 says, and it's something I think that all of us could remember. It says, wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. We need to calm down in the midst of outrage over something we hear. So now that they're going to go with the assumption of what their brothers had done over something they have heard, they were going to go cause war. And what's interesting, they're going to go to war with people that they fought with, brothers that they are the same flesh and blood. All the while, they had not killed off all the enemies of God that served false gods that would later come back and have a huge impact on them. They weren't going to worry about them, but they were going to go fight their own brothers. And so we want to ask ourselves this question this morning. How do we resolve conflict in an outrage culture? How do we do that? The first thing I think we need to see is this. We need to receive spiritual counsel. If you notice what they did, they actually, before they went, they did receive some spiritual counsel. So someone had the brains enough to say, let's talk to someone about this. So look at verse number 13. And it says, and the children of Israel sent unto the children of Reuben, and to the children of Gad, and half tribe of Manasseh, into the land of Gilead, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the priest. So here it is. They got somebody, as they were getting ready to go war against them. Phinehas is going to go actually talk to him, and with him 10 princes of the chief house and the princes throughout the tribes of Israel. Each one was the head of his house and of the fathers among thousands of Israel. And they came with the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and the half tribe of Manasseh unto the land of Gilead, and they spake with them, saying. Now notice what happened. It is before they actually went to war, some spiritual advisors, some counselors got involved in the situation, and they went and said, listen, before we go fight them, before we go start killing our brothers, let's get some counsel on this. Calm down. Just let's all calm down. We're becoming outraged over something we've heard. We have not talked to them. We are assuming. And we need to realize this, is that we need to calm down. So let's get some counsel on. Let's get some spiritual guidance on this situation. Once again, I said it last week, but I want to say it again. When our emotions go up, our IQ goes way down. We react. We become outraged. We become Twitter warriors or Facebook social media warriors. It's so easy these days to get so outraged and hide behind a screen and type and say all sorts of things through social media. But yet at the same time, we need to stop sometimes, calm down, and get some spiritual advice when conflict arises over something we've only heard, not something we can prove. So let's go talk to him. Let's find some spiritual guidance. And I'm going to tell you something for all of us. We need counselors in our life. We need counselors in our life who will tell us, honestly, listen, you need to calm down. Let's talk about this. Let's look at what should we be doing. What does the Bible say? A lot of times we get our counsel from people who are not godly nor spiritual. And they're going to give us bad advice. We need to seek out advice that's going to help resolve conflict and not create more conflict. And so we need to find spiritual advisors in our life. And sometimes your spouse might not even be the best person to go to if they're not going to give you spiritual advice. Sometimes your parents, sometimes the people on social media, sometimes asking a question and getting everybody's opinion. Sometimes you need to find just a couple people who are spiritual advisors, and whenever something like this arises where you have this desire to go to war with somebody, to have such conflict, maybe go and talk to them and say, listen, I need your perspective on this. Do you think, and then begin to talk to them about the situation. Sometimes we just need another person's perspective, and especially a perspective that's a godly perspective. There's just so many times in my life where I've needed counselors to come and say, Brad, maybe you should think of it from this perspective. Maybe you should just really consider it from this point of view. And there have been many times where I've avoided bad decisions because I've talked to somebody. As a pastor, there's been times where I've called up pastors who've been mentors to me and said, listen, I got this situation going on. Can you give me some advice about what you think I should do? Because right now, all I want to do is yell, scream, and start casting out demons in our church. I got a lot of problems here, and I want to, what is your perception? And there are many times where I go into a meeting where I'm so mad at somebody or so frustrated, and I sit down to someone who's going to give me counsel, and by the time I leave, I come out calm and with a mindset of what is a biblical response to the situation. And so we need to find counselors in our life that are going to give spiritual advice. It's going to help us make decisions based on what the Bible says, how the Bible says we got to resolve conflict, and then also make sure that our IQ goes back up and our emotions start going down. So look for the counselors in your life. Maybe it could be the pastor. Maybe it could be me. Maybe it could be your pastor if you're watching from somewhere else. Maybe it could be another person that's a spiritual advisor. Maybe that person is your mom, your dad, your husband, or wife. But just make sure that you respond, not in outrage, but in getting some spiritual advice. So the first thing is, if we want to resolve conflict in outrage culture, we got to get spiritual advice. Second thing is this, notice what they did. They eventually went and they spoke face to face. Verse number 15, you had the crazies that want to go off and fight, but then he got finished. He says, let's go talk to them face to face. Like verse 15, it says, and they came unto the children of Reuben, the children of Gad, the half tribe of Manasseh, the land of Gilead, and they spake with them, saying. In other words, they came, let's go talk to them face to face. We haven't heard their side of the story. Let's go talk to them. That is one of the greatest things to do. The Bible's given us clear commandments, even in modern day conflict. The best way to resolve conflict is talking face to face. They went on and said this, thus saith the whole congregation of the Lord, what trespass is this that you have committed against God of Israel, to turn away this day from following the Lord, and that you have built an altar that you might rebel this day against the Lord. So here's what they did. They said, we're coming to you to talk face to face, and here's the accusation that's being brought against you. We feel that you have built this altar, and you're going to make sacrifices to it, which is completely against what God said to do. So they went and they spoke face to face about the problem. That's exactly what Matthew chapter 15, verse 18 says, where Jesus says, listen, if you have aught against your brother, you go talk to him. And at the end of it, if you resolve the conflict, you've not caused more separation. You have gained a brother. You have restored the relationship. Too much has happened in conflict based off the fact I assume this is somebody's opinion, this is what they believe their motives were, and this is how mad I am, but yet we have not talked to somebody about it. We haven't gone to that person. We're bitter at somebody for something that they don't even think that they haven't even done. They didn't know that they offended you. They didn't know that there was conflict that has arisen. That was not their purpose. That was not their intent. That was not their heart. And yet all the while what has happened is because of the assumptions that have been made over something you have heard, you're going to get mad, get bitter. You're going to gossip. You're going to get back. And then what happens if you don't go talk to that person face to face? You are going to be the one that's in the wrong because you did not go to them and talk to them about the issue. There's one thing I've told our church over and over and over again. If you are upset about something, please come talk to me. Well, I shouldn't have to. You should know. There are just times, I'm telling you, you don't know you've offended somebody. And if you don't know, you can't fix it. And if I can't fix it, you're going to stay mad. So come talk to me. I know I'm being exaggerating here, but literally it's just mind-blowing. People get so outraged over something that has happened, that's in their mind, that didn't even happen. It wasn't the purpose or the intent of another one to offend or cause offense. But yet all of a sudden now someone's offended, they're mad, there's division, there's fighting, there's warring, and all over an assumption. Not a reality, because somebody did not go talk to them face to face. Now, listen, church, especially church here, if you're watching, I am once again pleading with you. If there is a problem, come talk to me. If there's a problem that is going on, I need to know about it so we can resolve the issue and not create more issues. If you have something against somebody here at the church, at your work, or even in your family, you need to talk to them about it. You need to go and actually ask their, hey, listen, this is what I'm feeling. Is this what's going on? Just curious. I'm horrible at this. I'm gonna be honest with you. I beg people to come talk to me, but I am horrible. I am horrible at going to talk to other people. I don't know what it is. I don't like it. I don't like the potential for conflict. So I don't know what the person is going to say. So a lot of times what I do is I just try to avoid conflict altogether. Now, there's something to be said about that. It's not always a bad thing because sometimes love covers a multitude of sins. Sometimes you just got to say, hey, you know what? this is not that big of a deal. I mean, yeah, I mean, they said that thing, but you know what? They probably didn't mean it. So, I'm just going to let it go. And so sometimes we got to understand, we have to go to that person face to face and talk to them. We have seen such division that happens through places and avenues like text, emails, and social media. And I'm going to tell you, that is not the place to resolve your conflict. I've struggled with going to people and talking to them, but one thing I try to avoid is doing it through text and emails and on social media. And even over the phone. Listen, all those things are avenues that sometimes cannot be the best way. It might be the only way for you right now, but seek out to talk to someone face to face. And here's something I heard somebody say just a while back. While we have weapons to war with, what we fail to often have is the character before we fight. You have weapons of war, but no character. That's a dangerous combination. Let's have the character to go and talk to someone face to face if something is rising up within you that's creating conflict. Before you get outraged, go talk to them face to face. The third thing we see that they did, actually it now is on the side of the Manasseh, the half-tribe of Manasseh, Reuben, and Gad, is what we see happen is that they actually received this accusation seriously. So look at verse number 17. Is this iniquity of Peor too little for us, from which we are not cleansed until this day, although we are this plague in this congregation of the Lord? But that ye must turn away this day, following the Lord, that you will be seeing you rebel today against the Lord. Tomorrow you will wrath the whole congregation of Israel. He's saying, listen, understand this. They're saying, hey, you tribes, you smaller tribes here that are on the other side of Jordan, remember all the things that have happened in the past. Remember what happened to Achan. Remember what happened to Achan as he stole the possessions and we lost the battle and many people died. I remember all those things that have happened. You need to make sure you are not going to take this not too seriously. You got to take this seriously. This is a big deal. If you build this altar and you're going to sacrifice, you're going to bring judgment upon all of us. And if that's going to happen, in verse number 19 says, you might as well go ahead and move back over with us, and so you can have some accountability. Remember what happened to Achan. Don't go down that same road. And then in verse number 21, notice what happened. The children of Reuben and the children of Gad and half-tribe of Manasseh answered and said unto the heads of the thousands of Israel, the Lord God of gods, the Lord God of gods, he knoweth, and Israel shall know. If it be rebellion or transgression against the Lord, save us not this day. They're saying, we totally agree with you. If we are doing this in a sinful way, then we are rebelling against God, then we want to make sure we get this right. Wow. How many times have you gone to somebody and brought up an issue and they respond with, you know what, if you were right, man, I am wrong. I'm just going to tell you, we've been talking about having a be easily offended and outraged, but when we actually go to talk to somebody, one of my biggest fears is they are going to just lash out at me. I want you to notice Gad and Reuben and half-tribe Manasseh, their humility. They said, listen, hey, that is not our intent, but listen, if that's what you feel like, if that's what's going on, we're so sorry. God, judge us this day, that be our heart. Verse number 22, the Lord God of gods, the Lord God of God, he knoweth, he says, that he shall know, save us not this day, that we have built an altar to turn from following the Lord, or if to offer thereupon burnt offerings or meat offerings, or if offer peace offerings thereupon, let the Lord himself require it. And if we have not rather done it for fear of this thing, saying it has come to the children of might speak unto our children, saying, what have done the Lord of Israel? And notice what he's saying there. If this is true, hey, we take responsibility. And I look at that and I say, what they did, their act of humility, is they listened. They did not become defensive. Sometimes what happens is you want to come and say, hey, I want to talk to you about this situation. You're doing the right things. You're saying, I'm gonna get some spiritual counsel. I'm gonna go talk to them face to face so we can resolve this conflict. But all of a sudden they lash out at you because they become defensive. Even if what you have asked them is not true, they become defensive. And all of a sudden now what was not a bad situation is now becoming a bad situation. And that's why there's so much outrage. Listen, on both sides, we got to be humble in approaching. Check the beam in our own eye before we check the speck in our brother's eye. But when we go to the person, if you're going to have someone come to you and ask you a certain situation, let's be humble enough. Stay calm enough. Don't get outraged. Listen. And then maybe what they have to say, listen to, hey, oh man, I did not mean that to happen. If that's true, boy, we stand before God in judgment. We agree with you. They didn't get mad. They didn't ruin their relationship. As a matter of fact, exactly what we saw, they gained a brother. When a brother brings an issue to us, take the issue seriously and listen. And we have put division between us because people are often afraid to come and talk to us because of our reactions. Man, that is such a common occurrence, as we have so much fear to go in this outraged culture to talk to somebody because we're afraid they will get mad and that their reaction will be over or above and say, I can't believe you believe that about me. And now all of a sudden you now have a conflict. But notice the humility. So listen, you're right. If that is true, we have messed up. So here's what happens. They clarified their position next. They clarified their position. It says that they clarified their position in verse number 24. It says, listen, no, that is not why we did this. We actually built this, that if our children raise up and they say, hey, what is our history? What is our heritage? What God do we serve? This altar is to remind us about where we came from. Here's the reality here. It says that they built this as a memorial. And so they clarified their position. They said, we want to seek peace with you. You know, Jesus called us to be peacemakers. Not to wait for someone else to make peace with us, but that we pursue to make peace with people. They wanted to resolve this issue, so they clarified their position. No, this was actually meant for us to let people remember who you are and what God has done for both of us. So notice this last point here now. They rejoiced in unity together with God. So what we see here that happens is verse number 31. It says, hey, we appreciate you so much, what all you've done. And it says in verse number 32, it says, then Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the priest, the princes, returned from the children of Reuben and from the children of Gad, and the land of Gilead, and to the land of Canaan, to the children of Israel, and brought them word again. In other words, they're coming and say, you've heard this, but here's what has happened. And the thing pleased the children of Israel. The children of Israel blessed God and did not intend to go up against them in battle to destroy the land wherewith the children of Israel of Reuben and Gad dwelt. And the children of Reuben and the children of Gad called the altar Ed, and for it shall be a witness between us that the Lord is God. Notice what happens is that they now have given that name of the altar Ed, which basically means this. It talks about that our unity together is a witness with our oneness with God. It just reminds me so much that unity is such a key in all this. It shows forth the glory of God when we are unified as brothers and sisters in Christ. They came back and said, hey, we were wrong. I want you to know that everything that they're doing over there is right. They are still with us. We need to make sure we think about these things before we go off to fight. And I want you to know that they built this as an altar to be a memorial to what all has gone on with us, as our past, our history for God. And that is something for us to remember. That because of the gospel, our unity together is a witness of our oneness with God. Our oneness to God comes because of the gospel. And it should be that our unity is a witness of that. That it is an outward declaration that as Christians we are unified together. I want to encourage each of us to remember that. That it's supposed to be that we dwell together in unity. Behold, Psalms 133 says this, behold, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. And that's exactly what we need to do. Listen, there are a lot of things we see and hear that happen. Before you go to war and cause conflict in a church, in a family, wherever it might be, maybe it's at your workplace within just people that you know. Before you cause conflict, make sure you seek out spiritual counsel. Go and talk to them face to face. And if you're the one that has someone come and talk to you face to face, hey, listen, take it seriously, and then make sure that your heart is right. Clarify your position, and then make sure that you, at the very end, are striving together for that unity in the faith. Because your unity together is a declaration to the lost people about your unity to God. Unity together is a declaration to lost people about your oneness with God because of the gospel. What we want to see happen is do not cause conflict. Do not cause and be outraged. In the outraged culture which we live in, do not allow outrage to determine and dictate to your direction. Let rational, godly, biblical thinking direct your actions. And that's exactly what we need to do. We need to be peacemakers, pursuing peace. So maybe this morning you've got something against a brother. Let's get it taken care of. Maybe it is that there are some things that are happening that you are feeling but you don't know. Go talk to him. Maybe it is that you need to seek some spiritual counsel. Maybe it is that you actually right now need to just take a few steps back, breathe, and then make sure, is this something I really need to bring up? Love covers a multitude of sins, transgressions. Is this something I'm really offended about? Is it something I'm really outraged about? Or is this something that's, it's not that big of a deal? It's not. But if it is, let's go talk to him. Make sure we're doing things right. Let's make sure we're doing things the Bible way. How do we resolve conflict in an outraged culture? We got to seek spiritual counselors. We got to also make sure we go talk to them face to face. Take it seriously. And then make sure you clarify what is really going on, the truth. And then celebrate the unity that you have together in God. Make sure you celebrate your unity together as a witness and declaration of your oneness with God. And maybe this morning it could be an encouragement to you to just reach out to somebody and say, listen, I've had this thing going on in my life for a while. I've been upset about this, and I just want to get it right with you. And I want to tell you I'm sorry. And maybe saying these words, I'm wrong, I messed up, I'm sorry, will you forgive me, might help out a lot. Thank you for tuning in this morning. Love you. Have a great rest of the day. Let's end in a word of prayer. Lord, thank you for the day that you've given to us. God, thank you so much for everything that we have learned just from this passage. That God, you truly do want us to resolve our conflicts in a way that honors you and brings and shows the oneness that we have in you. And so, God, I do ask that you bless now. And if there's anybody that needs to maybe get some things right with somebody in their life, that they would do that today. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great day.